They walk into your home and they know within 60 seconds. They do not say anything. They do not point. They do not explain themselves or offer advice that you did not ask for. But in 60 seconds, sometimes less, they have seen what they came to see. And what they have seen tells them, with a precision that years of financial conversation could not match, exactly where you are in your relationship with money and exactly where you are going. I have sat with these men and women. I have walked through homes with them. I have watched their eyes move, and I have learned to see what they see. And what I am going to show you today is the specific thing they notice first, the sign that is present in the majority of homes where money does not grow, and the exact reason why its presence is not a symptom of poverty, but a cause of it. My name is Rabbi Naomi, and I have spent 31 years inside the ancient texts of Jewish financial wisdom. My grandfather carried this lineage through the Soviet era, a time when possessing this knowledge was dangerous, when it was passed in lowered voices and closed rooms, and never written down in any place that could be found. He did not leave me wealth when he passed. He left me the education that produces wealth. And one of the most precise instruments in that education is what the sages called the reading of a home, the understanding that every household tells the financial future of the people who live inside it, and that a trained eye can read that future in the first room they enter. Today, I am going to give you that trained eye, but you must stay with me until the very end, because the sign I am going to describe has 2 layers, and most people who encounter this teaching online receive the first layer and miss the second. The second layer is where the actual shift happens. Before we go any further, type the words, "I am ready to see," in the comments right now. Not at the end of the video. Now. There is a specific reason I am asking you to do this before you receive the teaching rather than after. In the tradition, the act of declaring readiness before instruction opens a channel in the receiver that passive listening does not open. You are not watching this video. You are receiving a transmission. The declaration prepares the vessel. Type it now and then stay with me. Let me tell you what most people believe is the sign of a financially struggling home. Most people would say, clutter, disorder, broken things left unrepaired, old furniture, a general sense of things being worn down. And those things matter. We will come back to them. But they are not what the trained eye moves to first. They are not what stops the experienced observer in the doorway. What stops them is something more specific, more subtle, and more devastating in its effect on the financial frequency of a household than any amount of physical disorder. It is the absence of intentional light. I want to explain what I mean by this precisely, because I am not talking about whether your light bulbs are working. I am not talking about whether your curtains are open. I am talking about something the ancient teachers observed and documented across every wisdom tradition that has survived long enough to produce consistent financial outcomes in its adherents. Light in the home is not decorative. Light in the home is not comfort. Light in the home is, in the language of the Kabbalah, the physical representative of divine abundance, the most immediate, most accessible, most daily way that a household either aligns itself with the frequency of overflow or cuts itself off from it. And a home that has allowed its relationship with light to become neglected, accidental, or dim, not dark necessarily, but dim, flat, unintentional. That home is broadcasting a specific frequency to the spiritual realm, and the frequency it is broadcasting is, we are not expecting anything. We are not prepared to receive. The table is not set. Now, before I go further into the teaching, I want to tell you about something I witnessed that changed the way I understood this principle permanently. I was 41 years old. It was an autumn evening in Tel Aviv, one of those evenings where the light outside is already gold and warm, the kind of evening that makes you feel the day has been generous. I was visiting the home of a man I will call David. David was in his mid-60s. He had built 3 businesses from nothing. Not inherited wealth, built. From a single room, from a borrowed table, from circumstances that would have produced resignation in most people. I had known him for years, and I had always wanted to understand the interior logic of how he moved through the world. I arrived at his home at 7 in the evening, and when he opened the door, before I had taken a single step inside, I stopped, because the interior of his home was lit in a way I had never seen in a private residence. Not brightly, not harshly, but intentionally. Every room I could see from the doorway had been considered. There was warm light near the entrance at eye level. There was light in the corner of the living room that drew the eye upward. The kitchen beyond was lit from 2 directions so that no surface was in shadow. And on the table in the dining room, in the center of the home, there were candles. Not for a special occasion, not for a holiday, just candles. Burning on a Tuesday evening in October, as though the meal that was about to happen was the most important meal of the year. I said to him, "David, tell me about the light." He smiled. He said, "My mother taught me this when I was 7 years old. She said, 'A home that is waiting for abundance must look like abundance has already arrived.' She said, 'You cannot receive a guest you have not prepared for.' And abundance," she said, "is the most discerning guest there is. It does not enter through a door that is not open. It does not sit at a table that has not been set. Light," she told him, "is how you tell the universe, 'I have set the table. I am ready. Come.'" I went home that night and I walked through my own home as though I were seeing it for the first time. And what I saw troubled me. Not darkness, not disorder, but a flatness. A room that was lit for function and nothing more. A kitchen that was bright for cooking and dim everywhere else. A hallway that had never been considered as a space at all. An entrance, the most spiritually significant threshold in any home according to the ancient teaching, that was lit by a single overhead bulb that had not been thought about since the day it was installed. I understood in that moment that I had been maintaining a home that was lit for survival. And a home lit for survival broadcasts the frequency of survival. Not overflow, not abundance, survival. Let me now give you the teaching in its complete form, because what I have described so far is the observation. The observation is not enough. The observation without the principle behind it and the precise action it calls for is merely interesting. And interesting does not change financial lives. The principle is this. In the Kabbalistic understanding of the home, every household has what the teachers called a Rosh Habayit, a spiritual head, a central organizing frequency that determines what the home is able to receive and hold. This frequency is not set once. It is set and reset daily through the habits, practices, and physical arrangements of the people who live inside it. And of all the daily arrangements that influence this frequency, none is more immediate, none is more powerful, and none is more completely within your control than the arrangement of light. Because light in a home is a daily declaration. Every time you choose how a room is lit, consciously or unconsciously, you are broadcasting a signal about your expectation of what this day holds, about whether you are living in a home that is expanding or contracting, about whether the table is set or the kitchen is closed. The ancient teachers identified 3 specific qualities of light that the financially flourishing home possesses and the financially stagnant home almost universally lacks. The first is warmth, not heat, warmth of tone. The specific color temperature of light that the tradition associates with the frequency of welcome, of generosity, of expansion. Cold blue-white light, the light of offices, of hospitals, of interrogation rooms, broadcasts a frequency of contraction, of assessment, of the withholding of comfort. The sages observed this centuries before the science of color temperature was formalized. They simply noted the difference in how spaces felt and what those spaces tended to produce in the people who inhabited them. Warm light, amber, golden, the color of firelight and candlelight and late afternoon sun, broadcasts welcome. And a home that broadcasts welcome receives. The second quality is intentionality at the entrance. The threshold of a home, the first 3 feet inside the door, is what the ancient teachers called the gateway of frequency. It is the point at which the energy of the outside world and the energy of the home meet and negotiate. A threshold that is dim, that is functionally lit or not lit at all, is a threshold that has not been claimed. It is a spiritual vacancy sign. The financially flourishing homes the sages described, and that I have observed across 31 years of this work, almost universally have a point of warm, considered light within the first 3 feet of the entrance. Not a chandelier necessarily, not an expensive fixture, a lamp at eye level, a candle on a table by the door. Something that says, this threshold is intentional. Someone lives here who is expecting something good to arrive. The third quality is what I call living light. Light that is not fixed, not static, not institutional. Candlelight, the flame of an oil lamp. Something that moves, that breathes, that responds to the air of the room it inhabits. The tradition's emphasis on candles and oil lamps was not merely practical. In the ancient world, these were the available technologies of light. It was theological. A flame is alive. A flame consumes and produces simultaneously. A flame requires attention. It must be tended. It cannot simply be switched on and forgotten. The act of tending a flame is itself a practice of intentionality. And the teachers observed that homes where a living light burned regularly, not only on the Sabbath, not only on holy days, but as a practice of the ordinary week, tended to produce a relationship with provision that static, institutional light did not. This is the behavior of someone who is not yet ready to receive abundance, to light their home for function and never for frequency. I say this not to shame, but to name a specific habit that carries a specific consequence. And the correction is not expensive. It does not require renovation. It does not require a budget you do not have. It requires a decision. Tonight, before you sleep, here is the precise action the teaching calls for. Before anything else, before the candles, before the rearranging of lamps, before any other step, stand in the entrance of your home and look at it as though you are a guest arriving for the first time. What does the light tell you about the expectation of the people who live here? Is this a home that is waiting to receive something? Or is this a home that has forgotten to wait? Be honest. The ancient teachers said that the diagnosis must be clear before the medicine is prescribed. Then do 3 things. Change the bulb at your entrance today, not someday, today, to the warmest tone available to you. Place something at eye level near your front door that holds light, a lamp, a lantern, a candle in a holder that is safe and stable. And begin the practice the sages called Ner Tamid for the home, a continuous light. Not all night, not forever, but each evening as the day moves toward its end, light something in the central room of your home that breathes, a candle, an oil lamp, something alive. And as you light it, say this, I am setting the table. I am ready. What belongs in this home, let it find the door. Do this for 7 consecutive evenings. What I have seen tend to follow this practice. when it is done with full intention and not merely as an experiment, is a shift in the quality of what enters the home in the week that follows. Not always financial and not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a conversation that opens a door. Sometimes it is an unexpected piece of information that resolves something that has been stuck. Sometimes it is financial and specific. The channel does not always announce itself with a fanfare. It announces itself with a movement. Your task is to recognize the movement and not dismiss it. What I have given you today is the first and most visible layer of this teaching, the sign that the trained eye sees within 60 seconds. But there is a second layer that I promised you at the beginning, and I will give it to you now. The second layer is this. The reason the absence of intentional light is so damaging to the financial frequency of a home is not only what it broadcasts outward, it is what it produces inward in the people who live inside it. A home that is dim trains the minds of its inhabitants to expect dimness. A home that is flat in its light creates a flatness in the daily emotional register of the people who wake up inside it every morning. And a person living in a mild, unnoticed, chronic flatness, a person who has adapted to a home that expects nothing, makes financial decisions from that flatness. They do not pursue the conversation that might open the door. They do not send the message. They do not make the call. Not because they are lazy, because their environment has been training them, day after day, to expect that the door is not open. Changing the light changes the training, and changing the training changes the decisions, and changing the decisions changes the outcomes. This is the second layer, and this is why the financially wise have known for generations that you cannot separate the state of a person's home from the state of a person's finances. They are one system. The complete teaching on the architecture of the financially flourishing home, the full spatial arrangement, the specific objects the ancient teachers identified as either conductors or blockers of financial frequency, the daily practices that maintain the channel once it is open. That full architecture is in the program I have been building for 22 years. The link is below this video. It is not inspiration, it is a system, a complete, sequenced, ancient-rooted system that I have refined across decades of sitting with real families in real financial situations and watching what works and what does not. If you are ready to move from observation to architecture, from understanding the problem to building the solution, the link is there. Move today. The clarity you are feeling right now is the first fruit of a channel beginning to open. Do not let it pass without acting on it. Tell me in the comments, which room in your home has the worst light? Just name the room. That single act of naming is the beginning of the correction. I read every comment. I will respond to as many as I am able. This channel is a lineage transmission, not a content schedule, not a theme, not a series of topics assembled for an algorithm. It is a body of knowledge being released because the time demands it. When you subscribe and press the notification bell, you are not following a channel. You are stepping into a community of people who have decided that the financial patterns they inherited are not the financial patterns they will pass on. Next week, I am going to reveal the specific words that wealthy families never speak in their homes. Phrases so common that almost everyone uses them. Phrases that the ancient teachers identified as direct closers of financial channels, and the precise replacements that reverse the effect. If you are not subscribed with the bell turned on, you will not see it when it arrives. And I promise you, based on what I know about how language and money interact at the spiritual level, you cannot afford to miss it. If this teaching opens something in you today, If you will walk through your home tonight and see it differently than you did this morning, press the like button before you leave this video. Not for me, for the person who is in a dim home right now, in a financially stagnant situation, searching for an explanation that goes deeper than the surface. Your press of that button is what puts this teaching in front of them. Become the channel of this wisdom reaching one more person. That generosity carries its own frequency. And that frequency is the exact opposite of what we have been talking about today. Go look at your entrance tonight, light something warm, set the table, and watch what arrives. May the light you bring into your home from this day forward be the physical declaration of the overflow that is on its way to you. Shalom.